Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it is a privilege to open the debate for the opposition on second reading of the Renters' Rights Bill in this momentous week. As the Right Honourable Lady said, it's the week that Labour reaches 100 days in office, and they are to be congratulated. Not everyone gets to 100 days.
Seems longer.
Sue Gray didn't. Yes, neither did Sue Gray. That's the point. Not everyone gets to 100 days, and so we congratulate them. But so far, the only real actions that we've seen are the noisy infighting and chaos resulting in the hurried reset that we saw over the weekend. Oh dear. Madam Deputy Speaker, this Renters' Rights Bill will be more chaos. The first time we faced each other across the dispatch box, I warned the Right Honourable Lady that she was being stitched up by the PM and the Chancellor. I also told the Right Honourable Lady that we were here to help, and we shall do so, especially as it's been a particularly rough time to be a woman in the Labour Party. Not just Sue Gray sacked, soon to be awarded with what Winston Churchill called a disappearage. The Honourable Member for Canterbury also took the brave decision to leave the Labour Party, and I have followed her career in this place closely, and although we do not agree on everything, she is very brave.
Point of order. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is debate on the Renters' Rights second reading. The Shadow Minister is all over the place.
Thank you for that point of order. I am sure that the Shadow Minister will come back to that subject. Shadow Minister.
I am still on that subject, Madam Deputy Speaker. And as I was saying, the member for Canterbury took the brave decision to leave the Labour Party, and I have followed her career in this place closely. And although we do not agree on everything, she is very brave. So perhaps the Secretary of State might well be feeling nervous, because as she brings this bill, I know her department is already breaking promises of its own. It promised a new national planning policy framework within 100 days. There is no new framework, just a consultation, as I predicted the last time that we had a debate on this subject. But to be fair, they have finally produced this Renters' Rights Bill after copying and pasting quite a lot of what we had, and yet it is still not ready. And it is not ready because the truth is that they cannot fix the rental market by tying it in knots with further interventions and directives. The simple truth is that this bill will not work. The proposals will fail. And we know it will fail because this approach has been tried. It's been tried in Scotland by those great experts in failure, the SNP. Research by housing experts Indigo House found that none of the Scottish legislation since 2017 has had the impact of protecting the majority of private residential sector tenants against excessive rent increases or high advertised market rents. It discovered that tenants found it more difficult to find a home, and that there was a particularly negative impact on those in greatest need, including homeless households and those with less economic power, including those claiming welfare benefits.
Will my friend give way? She's making a powerful speech about an important subject. I don't know if the Shadow Secretary of State is familiar with the reports from the Scottish Housing Network only this week that revealed that of landlords who are providing their homes to tenants, 16% are reducing their supply and fully 12% are looking at leaving the sector as a result of precisely this sort of attempt to over-regulate what would otherwise be a free market.
I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his intervention. I have not seen that specific report, but I have seen others that indicate that this is what is happening. We have to be careful. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, I do appreciate what the government wants to do. It wants to make renting more secure and affordable. We want to do so as well. But this bill will not achieve that. It will have the opposite effect, as we have seen in Scotland. Because, as this government is going to find out over the course of this Parliament, you cannot buck the market. And I worry about the right... I give way.
Do you recall when your previous government was intending to bring forward measures such as this, and do you recall exactly why the previous government failed to do this?
No.
Yes, I do recall, and the reason why it did not get through is because we recognise the flaws in the bill. And so this is what I mean when I say that I worry about the Right Honourable Lady. Because the bright young things in Downing Street who have sent her out with this bill don't care if it fails. They will take the credit today. She will get the blame tomorrow. And what tenants will get is bad regulation, shortages, and higher prices, as we have seen in Scotland. Prices that will be paid by tenants, especially young people and the less well-off. I'll give way.
Isn't it the case that the country will see from the Honourable Lady's speech today that if you're a tenant in the private sector market, you have to fear the return of the Conservative Party in the same way if you're a mum who relies on maternity pay?
Yeah. I think that is a nonsense statement to make. The fact is that tenants are not going to be able to find properties to rent in the first place. That is the point that we are making. And it seems to me, from what the intervention that the honourable gentleman has made, is that they still do not understand these concepts. Prices that will be paid by tenants, especially young people and the less well-off, is what we're worried about. In England, demand is rising, but availability is not keeping up. 47% of landlords have either attempted to sell a property in 2023 or are thinking about it. The biggest reason? Fear of new laws. I give way.
I represent Penrith and Solway constituency, a constituency that contains the Lake District National Park and other tourist areas. Does the honourable member recognise that the last government's failure to introduce the promised reforms on Section 21 has led to many private landlords moving out of the private rental sector and into the holiday let market? You know, your amendment says here this will reduce the supply of housing.
I thank him for his comments. Private landlords will react to legislation that is being brought in. And this is the point that we are making, that we are reducing housing for the private rented sector by bringing in these sorts of regulations. 56% of landlords cited incoming legislation from the Renters Reform Bill as a factor in their decision to sell. That was our bill. So we already recognise the flaws there. That reduction in supply is bad for tenants as well as bad for landlords. We are losing homes in the private rented sector. I give way.
Very much. Does the honourable member recognise that the reduction in supply over the past few years has been primarily down to the increase in interest rates over the past couple of years, which has driven landlords out of the sector? And actually, a sector that is fundamentally broken requires the government to take action to provide security for those that need a home for themselves and their children.
Of course we want people to have security in homes, but in order to do that, we need to increase supply. We did what we could when we were in government, and we will help this government to deliver. But the fact of the matter is that this legislation is not going to help. We would love it if it did. We tried to make it work, and we couldn't. It was having negative effects. Landlords provide a vital service. The private rented sector is essential for those who can't yet afford a mortgage, for young people, and for those who need to move for work. Landlords selling and giving up homes for rent, for mortgages, do not help many of those people who need to rent. The overwhelming majority of landlords are responsible, and I'm glad that the Right Honourable Lady acknowledged that. They are responsible and law-abiding, and they see their property as a sustainable long-term investment. The government claims this legislation will reform the rental market. We do not believe it will. It will break it. Respect for property rights is not just an abstract principle. It underpins confidence in our economy and legal system. If the government does not protect property rights, it damages investment. If it damages investment, it hits growth. It is painfully clear to anyone who understands markets that this bill will act as a powerful disincentive for anyone to rent out their property. Most tenants do not have friends and family to rent from, and unlike the Labour Party, they do not have millionaire donors to put them up. So they will suffer most when supply goes down and rents go up. I give way.
Thank you for giving way. Could I just ask, if it was so patently obvious and it was such a fundamental principle of property rights, why it is everyone on these side of the benches, including yourself, stood on a manifesto that committed to it? Isn't the truth is that it's not that you didn't think it would work, it's just that you absolutely, like on many things, failed to deliver?
Well, I'm afraid to say that there's a big difference between having a headline in a manifesto and seeing the detail, as many of the MPs on that side of the House are soon going to find out. Your Prime Minister could not answer, their Prime Minister could not answer the question about whether or not they were going to increase taxes or not this afternoon. It's very easy. Campaigning is easy. Governing is hard. So, but perhaps he will find out soon enough. But perhaps the Labour benches are oblivious to these costs and dynamic effects. I can understand that. Listening to their interventions, it appears so. I note that no impact assessment for this bill is available, an omission which has rightly drawn criticism from the Regulatory Policy Committee. So will the Right Honourable Lady tell us, has there been an impact assessment? If it exists, where is it? And if it does not exist, why did the government not ask for one? I hope that this is not how Labour means to go on. I provided impact assessments when I was in government on all sorts of complex legislation. I know it is difficult. I know it can create argument, but I also know that there is a lot more badly thought out and costly regulation where this came from, and we on this side of the House are worried. I know the benches opposite will want to point to the last government's renters reform bill. I've heard their interventions, but the fact is that bill was flawed, and I am quite happy to say that. But at least it recognised the practical effect of its provisions, and it wouldn't have come into full effect until the courts were ready. The then Deluxe Select Committee warned in 2023 the equivalent provisions in the Renters Reform Bill created a real risk that the current systems will be overwhelmed and there will be a logjam with lengthy delays. This government is pressing ahead with these measures that will cause gridlock in our justice system and pit landlords and tenants against each other in protracted litigation. I'll give way.
It's absolutely extraordinary to hear the strong opposition for every part of this bill from the Right Honourable, my Right Honourable member. Or maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe she isn't opposed to the parts of the bill which will protect children from getting breathing problems and ending up being hospitalised. Maybe she isn't against the protections that the bill introduces so that people can finally live in decent accommodation. Because if she isn't opposed to that, what is she opposed? Why is she so relentlessly negative, and may I say, forgive me as a new member, so relentlessly patronising?
I don't mean to be patronising, but it is quite difficult. It is quite difficult when there are very, very clear issues which have precedence, as we said, in Scotland. The question isn't why I'm being patronising. The question is why are they ignoring what has happened when these proposals have been tried in another part of the UK? That is a serious problem. And the fact of the matter is, all of us here want the best for children. All of us here want to see tenants do well. It is very wrong of him to try and ascribe negative motivations when we are pointing out problems with legislation. We here are doing our jobs. The fact is that we think that this bill will not work. The government is pressing ahead with these measures. They will cause gridlock. I'd like to make some progress. They will cause gridlock in the justice system, and that will create even more problems for tenants. The people that he is trying to help will not be able to get a home in the first place. None of us want to see that. We have to do better. So when you combine the... I would be giving way first to the gentleman on the Lib Dem benches, right?
I thank you for giving way. 25% of Conservative MPs are landlords. Do you think that this has any bearing on the Conservative Party's position on this bill?
Yes. I think we need to focus on the contents of this bill. If anyone has an issue with landlords in this House, it is the Labour members. I noticed that the member for Ilford South ran away before this bill started. I think they should look at themselves, and I think that he probably better check his fellow party members before asking that sort of question. But as I was saying, when you combine the problems with the protracted litigation in the courts with the new extended and highly convoluted notice requirements for recovering a property where the tenant has not paid the rent, a landlord whose tenant is in arrears will face many months of uncertainty and cost. So let me summarise in 2 words why this bill will face. It is unintended consequences. And that is what we get when we start with policy rather than with first principles. I give way to the Honourable Lady.
Can I thank the Right Honourable Lady? Does she not think there is already gridlock in the county court? I can tell her that currently, as of today, A landlord who secures a possession order that has expires waits 12 weeks to get a bailiff's warrant. Our courts are gridlocked right now.
I think that is an excellent point. We should not make the problem worse. Madam Deputy Speaker, we should start with first principles, not policy. There are no first principles here that will help this bill get through. We want to help this bill get through and deliver for tenants and landlords. But as I've seen from the comments being made, this seems to be an issue for the left that is about being tough, looking to be tough on landlords and passing legislation with the right sounding title rather than delivering real improvements for people's lives. And, you know, I heard the Right Honourable Lady teasing the Right Honourable Member for New Forest West, but I think that it is hypocritical to criticise those of us in this House who declare our interests and who do well on this side of the House when they have a member who was letting out homes with mould and unsanitary homes and was disgraced in the press. They should look at why that is happening on their side of the House. We want a housing market that works for everyone. Landlords, tenants, those who want to own their home. By attacking those who rent out homes, they will damage investment in new homes. They will push landlords out of the market and drive up rents. This is bad for everyone. By piling on excessive regulation, they will push good landlords out and empower those bad landlords who simply ignore the rules. We need to look at enforcement of the rules we already have. We all agree that renters need a better deal, but this bill is not going to work. It is not what they need. We found that out. We want to help deliver a good bill. If the government wants to help renters, it should drive up housing supply. So far, no sign of that. If the government wants to help renters, it needs to reduce immigration. So far, no sign of that. 80% of recent migrants have moved into the private rental sector. That is creating a demand the sector cannot cope with. And if the government wants to help renters, it needs to enforce existing rules against the bad landlords that do not look after their tenants, rather than create new rules that will make the problem worse. This legislation is typical of Labour in government. So that is why we are tabling a reasoned amendment, because this bill fails to fix the major issues and adds yet more rules and regulations to keep bureaucrats busy, rather than finding solutions to help those tenants who desperately need them.